Despite a slow start to the summer movie season, consisting mostly of tired franchises relying on long action scenes full of bad CGI, things are beginning to turn around for the better. Finally, as we get closer to the midpoint of July, it feels like we're finally getting some true summer films, full of blockbuster action, light crowd pleaser comedies, and even a few historical dramas made by auteurs. But amongst all of these, there seems to be one film that, despite not fitting into any of those categories, just might be the must-see film of the summer, but perhaps not for the typical reasons. The Sound of Freedom begins in Honduras, as two young children are visited by Katie, a former model who tells them and their father, Roberto, of an upcoming audition. Roberto drops them off and returns later to find them and everyone else missing. Cut to California, where Jim Caviezel's Tim Ballard is in the middle of an operation to take down a man selling pictures of children online. After a conversation with a fellow agent who couldn't handle the dark nature of their work anymore, Tim pushes to investigate further in hopes of doing more than simply locking up criminals, but to find the children. He tracks down Miguel, reuniting him with his father, but learns that his sister is still missing, and vows to the family that he will find her as well. He travels to Colombia, where he befriends Vampiro, a former cartel accountant now on a quest for redemption, buying children and then setting them free. Along with some rich friends they convince of their cause, they concoct a plan to take down Katie and her associates and rescue more than 50 children, and hope to find Rocio among them. The plan is a success, but they learn that she has been sold to a dangerous revolutionary called Scorpion. Despite the near certainty of death just for entering this territory, Tim goes in search for her, posing as a doctor. He finds her, kills Scorpion, and escapes in the middle of the night, eventually reuniting her with her family. If there's one word that describes this film, it's restraint. Everything from the acting, to the music, to the cinematography, and to the direction is all muted and very held back. It's a film that you absolutely have to have the right state of mind going into, and know what and what not to expect. Unlike most films that involve kidnapping, where it's used as a bit of a catalyst to set up a larger-than-life, steroid-fueled action hero to swoop in and take on all the bad guys single-handedly and then blow everything up, here it's the driving force of the film. It's a constant weight hanging over the characters, compelling them to action through guilt and sorrow, and forces them on despite impossible odds. It's deeply upsetting, leaving the viewer with a mixture of horror, nausea, and sheer heartbreak. The subject matter is just not for the faint of heart. However, Sound of Freedom does an excellent job at handling this subject matter. It never glorifies the predators, and in fact makes a point of depicting them and perhaps even the nature of evil itself as accurately as it possibly can. As a former beauty queen luring children into her operation being depicted as one of the worst villains in the film, it shows how evil can come in many forms. It also never glorifies the grueling aspect of the work that it takes to find these predators, with most of the leads on the cases being obtained through normal conversation, and through the agents often having to act friendly and gain the trust of the most vile individuals imaginable. Perhaps most importantly, the film also never goes anywhere near depictions of violence against children or the child actors in the film just for the sake of shock value, or even gives verbal accounts, but instead keeps everything off camera, knowing the audience good and well understands what's going on. The choice of what to include and what not to include in the film shows incredible restraint and respect for the purpose of the film by the director. This is also shown in the film's incredible cinematography that very easily could have strayed into self-indulgence, but because it didn't, the result is a beautifully photographed film, far more so than most big-budget films out there today. It's particularly striking with its use of static camera shots, where another cinematographer might have gone for handheld for most of the film, or maybe even opted for long moving shots for action, sweeping crane shots for landscapes, and probably most commonly a long push-in dolly shot for emotional conversations. With cinematographer Gorka Andre typically keeping the camera locked down on a tripod, allowing for the emotion of the scene and the actors' performances to take center stage, and only moves the camera when the emotion and action absolutely necessitates it. He also shows his mastery of lighting, composing beautifully lit scenes that stay true to the sources presented, never looking staged or artificial, but that also convey the mood of the scene. In particular, pay attention to his final shot of the film, craning back from Rocio playing in her room, now reunited with her family. She is backlit brightly from the sun, but as the camera cranes back, it reveals all the rooms around her are dark, visually conveying the point of the story, with a single bright spot in the middle of overwhelming darkness. It's a haunting final image, visually communicating both the hope found in her story as well as the dark reality that surrounds it. In addition to the technical aspects of the filmmaking, the acting is superb, with Jim Caviezel's portrayal of Tim Ballard standing neck to neck with his role of Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. While it would be tempting as an actor to try and match the larger-than-life heroes of other thrillers, grumbling and yelling dark threats to his enemies, he instead is soft-spoken and muted, clearly holding back an anger and pain in service of a greater good for accomplishing his mission. Bill Camp also gives a stellar performance as Vampiro, adding a mild, subdued bit of flamboyant relief as a foil to Caviezel's dark, on-edge portrayal of Tim Ballard, which then makes Vampiro's weighty speech as to why he began helping children all the more tragic. Sound of Freedom has become a surprising hit, with the odds seemingly stacked against it, being a low-budget film produced by a tiny production company and distributed by an equally tiny studio, released only 4 days after Disney's Indiana Jones 5, Disney also having shelved the project back in 2018 when they acquired the original distributor 20th Century Fox, and having a non-stop attack campaign from quote-unquote journalists and media outlets. But despite all this, Sound of Freedom has become one of the major box office draws of the year, a sort of David and Goliath of sorts of the small indie film going up against practically all of Hollywood, shedding light on a terrible subject that gets no media attention, especially when stood against all the other current issues deemed as more important, which is perhaps why it never will be a must-see film, but is absolutely the film everyone must see.
God's children are not for sale.